الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to this series of Friday sermon discussions brought to you by Majlis Qulam Ahmadiyya UK Tarbiyyat Department on the blessed Friday sermons delivered by Hazrat Ameerul Momineen bin Aziz. I'm delighted to be joined by our friend Imran Deen Sahib. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Imran Sahib.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very, very good. How are you?
Yes, alhamdulillah. I'm excited to hear your summary of the Friday sermon. So go ahead and give us a summary of this most recent Friday sermon, please.
So as many of you know, Huzoor's continued with the life of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this particular Friday sermon, he's continued with the companionship of Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who was the first Khalifa. And in this particular sermon, so this sermon was really around sort of the Hijrah, so that's the migration from Mecca to Medina. So this Friday sermon was, going through the different incidents in the journey from Mecca to Medina, which many of you would know was when sort of the Meccans were sort of pushing away sort of the Muslims away. And in the one particular incident, which Huzoor mentions, is the incident of Suraika bin Malik. So at the time, the Meccans had actually put a reward. So they had put a bounty on the head of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they had said that anyone who captures him would get a reward. And that from sort of reading, I read as well that that reward was at the time 100 camels. So you can imagine 100 camels today, you might think is nothing, but camels back then was a form of transport, right? Think of cars today. So you thought of the average car of the value of that, it's millions. So there was a big reward for them. And so Suraika bin Malik decided that he would go out himself to capture the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he went there to try and capture him, God sort of rendered him unable to capture him. And at the same time, the point at which he was trying to capture him, he actually begged Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for peace and security, of which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that look, one day you'll be wearing the bracelets of Kisra. And these bracelets of Kisra, so you can think of them as like the crown jewels today of the UK. So something very, very sort of precious and worn by, at the time, the Persian kings. So the Persian kings used to wear this. And it wasn't until the time of Hazrat Umar that prophecy was fulfilled, and actually Suraika bin Malik was given the bracelets of Kisra. So that was where the fulfillment of the prophecy. And it wasn't during that incident of when Suraika bin Malik approached the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu that he became a Muslim. He became a Muslim later on, and it was before that incident of when he received the bracelets that happened. So as the journey goes on, as sort of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and Hazrat Abu Bakr continue on that journey, as naturally you would need food and something to eat right on your way, as a long journey. So at this time, they passed a tent of a woman called Mabad, and at that point, they asked her for, if she had food, meat, or dates that they could purchase from her. Now, at that time, she said, "Look, we don't have anything," because their tribe, or the people, were suffering from famine and hardship. And so the Prophet Muhammad actually, what Huzoor narrates is that he saw a goat in the corner, and he asked about this goat, and she said, Mabad said, "Look, this goat is very weak, and it can't even produce any milk. It's not very useful." And so the Prophet Muhammad said, "Well, actually, can I try and milk the goat?" So he prayed, and then when he went to try and milk the goat, milk came out, and it was enough milk to actually feed everyone. So he gave some milk to Mabad, and she drank it first. Then he drank it himself, and then he actually then purchased the goat after giving the milk to them. So again, another beautiful example of what you could say, like these are sort of miracles of prophecies being fulfilled during this time of Hijrah from Mecca to Medina. And at that same time, that incident of Mabad, she was obviously very impressed by the Prophet Muhammad that actually when the Meccans came, so remember the Meccans are still trying to capture the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and find out his whereabouts. She did not disclose his whereabouts, and even when to the point when they were getting very aggressive and very harsh, she said, if you don't leave, then her tribespeople will come and attack her. So then the Meccans retreated. Again, it's another example of where Prophet Muhammad sallallahu actually went, and in one way he was able to give those people, take them out of hardship, but also he himself was able to get food and also purchase the goods. It's a beautiful incident as well. And then along this journey, they're going from sort of Mecca to Medina. Hazrat Zubair radhiyallahu anhu gives the Prophet Muhammad and Hazrat Abu Bakr white clothes. And whilst they're on this journey, because of Hazrat Abu Bakr's status as as a business person, he's very kind of well known amongst the people. So they all sort of greet him on their travels and journeys in the caravans. But then they always ask, who's this person with you? For which Hazrat Abu Bakr says that, oh, this is just my guide. It's just the unassuming nature of Muhammad sallallahu, which we'll talk about in another incident later, that people didn't sort of know who he was, and given that the Meccans were chasing him, Hazrat Abu Bakr didn't want to expose who he was at that time. So as they're continuing on that journey, this is 8 days into the journey, as it sort of narrates that they arrive at Quba, which is about 3 miles away from Medina, and a Jewish person in Quba who's on the top of a hill sort of sees Hazrat Abu Bakr and the Prophet Muhammad and tells the people that, look, oh, your Muslim leader is here. Of which all the people rush out to go and see the Prophet Muhammad and Hazrat Abu Bakr. What they see is that Hazrat Abu Bakr is standing up whilst the Prophet Muhammad is sitting down. So as people do, they go and greet, because they know who Hazrat Abu Bakr is. They go and greet him. But then what they notice is that Hazrat Abu Bakr actually, his cloak is shielding the Prophet Muhammad because at the time the sun rays are obviously affecting him, right? So he's trying to sort of put a shield shield him from that sun. And then it's at that point they realize that, oh, this is the Prophet Muhammad because he's protecting him. So again, this is a kind of a beautiful example of where the sort of obedience, but also the love that Hazrat Abu Bakr had for his, the Prophet Muhammad. And it was at this point that they stayed on this journey, that they stayed at Quba for 10 nights, and they laid a foundation stone at the Mosque of Quba, which was established on sort of precepts of sort of righteousness. And sort of as they sort of continue on to their journey, the Prophet Muhammad they're into this valley of the Banu Salim bin Auf, and it came time for the Friday prayers, and it was at this place that the Holy Prophet in the mosque of the valley of Ranuna, along with another sort of 100 Muslims, that mosque then becomes that mosque becomes the mosque of Friday prayers. And this is the first Friday prayer offered by the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. And then Huzoor sort of clarifies that the mosque was sort of later established, but at that time, later on now it's known as the Mosque of the Friday Prayer. And as they continue, sorry, Karen?
No, Jazakallah, I think that's a fair bit of the summary. Just continuing on from all of the incidents, and there's so much to go into, and I really appreciate you explaining that for us. One thing that I really liked was, as you mentioned, the fact that Hazrat Abu Bakr referred to the Holy Prophet ﷺ as his guide, and he was his guide, right? He was his spiritual guide. He was the one that was leading him in the right path. So that point there was always something that actually was something that I really enjoyed. Just from your perspective as well, what is the relevance of these narrations that the Huzoor has been focusing on for many years now in regards to the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ?
I think so. From my perspective, one is that the understanding the actual sort of hardships that the companions were sort of going through, and also where we can relate as Muslims of today, and understanding the trials and tribulations that they went through. On one hand, it's relatable, right? So in this case, they were being physically or directly attacked by the Meccans, right? But they did not attack back, and the way in which they handled it. Actually, those people later became Muslims, and how you can, through your behavior, you can sort of change people. But also, for us to better understand the Quran and the scriptures, because on the one side, it's a living religion, right? So we can understand better how to practice Islam through the incidents and stories of the Prophet Muhammad and also his companions. It's just for us, it's one is relatability to understand the scriptures through the stories. We can understand better how to be better Muslims through these incidents and stories, and we can relate to them. And it can help us in our daily lives, right? In some of these incidents that we hear, in the one incident of simple prayer, those, in the story of the Hazrat about the whole concept of where she was struggling, they didn't have any, they were going through hardship, and the Prophet Muhammad prayed, and then they had milk, right? I'm sure many of us can relate that through prayers we were able to come over those hardships. These are beautiful examples of where we can improve our spiritual, on the one side, improve our spirituality, but also when we're going through difficulty, these stories kind of help us reflect and sort of give us some sort of point of guidance and reference.
Absolutely. Jazakallah, Imran Sahab. And Huzoor also gives us that points of reference by explaining some of these narrations as well. And we urge everyone to go back and watch the Friday sermon in its entirety and really try and focus on the message that Huzoor was delivering. As many of our regular viewers will know, we end this show with an extract from the Friday sermon itself. So let's watch that now.
Muslim رسول کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی قباء میں آمد کا ذکر کرتے ہوئے فرماتے ہیں کہ سراقہ کو رخصت کرنے کے بعد چند منزلیں طے کر کے رسول کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم مدینہ پہنچ گئے. مدینہ کے لوگ بے صبری سے آپ کا انتظار کر رہے تھے، اور اس سے زیادہ ان کی خوش قسمتی اور کیا ہو سکتی تھی کہ وہ سورج جو مکے کے لیے نکلا تھا مدینہ کے لوگوں پر جا طلوع ہوا. جب انہیں یہ خبر پہنچی کہ رسول کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم مکے سے غائب ہیں، یعنی مکے والوں مدینے والوں کو، تو اسی دن سے آپ کا انتظار کر رہے تھے. ان کا وفد روزانہ مدینے سے باہر کئی میل تک آپ کی تلاش کے لیے نکلتے تھے اور شام کو مایوس ہو کر واپس آ جاتے تھے. جب آپ مدینے کے پاس پہنچے تو آپ نے فیصلہ کیا کہ پہلے آپ کو قباء میں جو مدینے کے پاس ایک گاؤں تھا ٹھہریں. ایک یہودی نے آپ کی اونٹنیوں کو آتے دیکھا تو سمجھ گیا کہ یہ قافلہ محمد رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا ہے. وہ ایک ٹیلے پر چڑھ گیا اور اس نے آواز دی، اے کیلا کی اولاد. کیلا مدینے والوں کی ایک دادی تھی، اس کو کیلا کی اولاد کے نام سے پکارا جاتا تھا وہاں کے لوگوں کو. تم جس کے انتظار میں تھے آ گیا ہے. اس آواز کے پہنچتے ہی مدینے کا ہر شخص قباء کی طرف دوڑ پڑا. قباء کے باشندے اس خیال سے کہ خدا کا نبی ان میں ٹھہرنے کے لیے آیا ہے خوشی سے پھولے نہ سماتے تھے. اس موقع پر ایک ایسی بات ہوئی جو رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی سادگی کے کمال پر دلالت کرتی تھی. مدینے کے اکثر لوگ آپ کی شکل سے واقف نہیں تھے. جب قباء سے باہر ایک درخت کے نیچے آپ بیٹھے ہوئے تھے اور لوگ بھاگتے ہوئے مدینے سے آپ کی طرف آ رہے تھے، تو چونکہ رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم بہت زیادہ سادگی سے بیٹھے ہوئے تھے، ان میں سے ناواقف لوگ حضرت ابوبکر کو دیکھ کر، جو عمر میں گو چھوٹے تھے مگر ان کی داڑھی میں کچھ سفید بال آئے ہوئے تھے، اور اسی طرح ان کا لباس رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم سے کچھ بہتر تھا، یہی سمجھتے تھے کہ ابوبکر رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم ہیں، اور بڑے ادب سے آپ کی طرف منہ کر کے بیٹھ جاتے تھے. حضرت ابوبکر نے جب یہ بات دیکھی تو سمجھ لیا کہ لوگوں کو غلطی لگ رہی ہے. وہ جھٹ چادر پھیلا کر سورج کے سامنے کھڑے ہو گئے اور کہا، یا رسول اللہ، آپ پر دھوپ پڑ رہی ہے، میں آپ پر سایہ کرتا ہوں. اور اس لطیف طریق سے انہوں نے لوگوں پر ان کی غلطی کو ظاہر کر دیا.